The Kara Sea is part of the Arctic Ocean north of Siberia. It is separated from the Barents Sea to the west by the Kara Strait and Novaya Zemlya, and the Laptev Sea to the east by the Severnaya Zemlya archipelago. It is named for the Kara River, flowing into Badritskaya Bay, which is now relatively insignificant but which played an important role in the Russian conquest of northern Siberia. The word Kara is derived from Kara, which in several Turkic languages means black and also symbolizes north. The Kara Sea's northern limit is marked geographically by a line running from Cape Kolsat in Graham Bell Island, Franz Josef Land, to Cape Molotov, Arctic Cape, the northernmost point of Komsomolets Island in Severnaya Zemlya. The Kara Sea is roughly 1,450 kilometers long and 970 kilometers wide with an area of around 880,000 square kilometers, 339,770 square miles, and a mean depth of 110 meters, 360 feet. Compared to the Barents Sea, which receives relatively warm currents from the Atlantic, the Kara Sea is much colder, remaining frozen for over 9 months a year. The Kara receives a large amount of fresh water from the Ob, Yenisei, Pyazina, and Tamura rivers, so its salinity is variable. Its main ports are Novi Port and Dixon, and it is important as a fishing ground although the sea is ice-bound for all but 2 months of the year. Significant discoveries of petroleum and natural gas, the East Prinovizmolsky field, an extension of the West Siberian oil basin, have been made but have not yet been developed. In 2014, U.S. government sanctions resulted in Exxon having until September 26 to discontinue its operations in the Kara Sea. The Kara Sea was formerly known as Oceanoscythicus or Mare Glaciale, and it appears with these names in old 16th century maps. Since it is closed by ice most of the year, it remained largely unexplored until the late 19th century. In 1556 Stephen Burrow sailed in the Search Thrift to try to reach the Ob River, but he was stopped by ice and fog at the entrance to the Kara Sea. Not until 1580 did another English expedition, under Arthur Pett and Charles Jackman, attempt its passage. They too failed to penetrate it, and England lost interest in searching for the Northeast Passage. In 1736 to 1737 Russian Admiral Stepan Malygin undertook a voyage from Dolgi Island in the Barents Sea. The 2 ships in this early expedition were the Pervy, under Malygin's command, and the Vtoroy under Captain A. Skuratov. After entering the little-explored Kara Sea, they sailed to the mouth of the Ob River. Malygin took careful observations of these hitherto almost unknown areas of the Russian Arctic coastline. With this knowledge he was able to draw the first somewhat accurate map of the Arctic shores between the Pechora River and the Ob River. In 1878, Finnish explorer Adolf Erik Nordenskjöld on ship Vega sailed across the Kara Sea from Gothenburg, along the coast of Siberia, and despite the ice packs, got to 180 degrees longitude by early September. Frozen in for the winter in the Chukchi Sea, Nordenskjöld waited and bartered with the local Chukchi people. The following July, the Vega was freed from the ice, and continued to Yokohama, Japan. He became the first to force the Northeast Passage. The largest group of islands in the Kara Sea, the Nordenskjöld Archipelago, has been named in his honor. The year 1912 was a tragic one for Russian explorers in the Kara Sea. In that fateful year unbroken consolidated ice blocked the way for the Northern Sea route, and 3 expeditions that had to cross the Kara Sea became trapped and failed: Sadov's on vessel Street Foka, Bryuzilov's on the Street Anna, and Ryuzinov's on the Gherkils. Georgy Sadov intended to reach Franz Josef Land on ship, leave a depot over there, and sledged to the pole. Due to the heavy ice, the vessel could only reach Novaya Zemlya the first summer and winter than Franz Josef Land. In February 1914, Sadov headed to the North Pole with 2 sailors and 3 sledges, but he fell ill and died on Rudolph Island. Georgy Brusilov attempted to navigate the Northeast Passage, was trapped in the Kara Sea, and drifted northward for more than 2 years, reaching latitude 83 degrees 17 N. 13 men, headed by Valerian Albanov, left the vessel and started to cross the ice to Franz Josef Land, but only Albanov and 1 sailor, Alexander Conrad, survived after a gruesome 3-month ordeal. The survivors brought the ship log of Street Anna, the map of her drift, and daily meteorological records, but the destiny of those who stayed on board remains unknown. In the same year, the expedition of Vladimir Ryazanov was lost in the Kara Sea. The prolonged absence of those 3 expeditions stirred public attention, and a few small rescue expeditions were launched, including Jan Nagorsky's 5 air flights over the sea and ice from the NW coast of Novaya Zemlya. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, the scale and scope of exploration of the Kara Sea increased greatly as part of the work of developing the Northern Sea Route. Polar stations, of which 5 already existed in 1917, increased in number, providing meteorologic, ice reconnaissance, and radio facilities. By 1932 there were 24 stations, by 1948 about 80, and by the 1970s more than 100. The use of icebreakers and, later, aircraft as platforms for scientific work was developed. In 1929 and 1930 the icebreaker Sadov carried groups of scientists to Severnaya Zemlya, the last major piece of unsurveyed territory in the Soviet Arctic. The archipelago was completely mapped under Georgy Ushakov between 1930 and 1932. Particularly worth noting are 3 cruises of the icebreaker Sadko, which went farther north than most. In 1935 and 1936 the last unexplored areas in the northern Kara Sea were examined and small and elusive Ushakov Island was discovered. In the summer of 1942, German Kriegsmarine warships and submarines entered the Kara Sea to destroy as many Russian vessels as possible. This naval campaign was named Operation Wonderland. Its success was limited by the presence of ice floes, as well as bad weather and fog. These effectively protected the Soviet ships, preventing the damage that could have been inflicted on the Soviet fleet under fair weather conditions. In October 2010, the Russian government awarded a license to Russian oil company Rosneft for developing the East Prinovorzhmolsky oil and gas structure in the Kara Sea.